I'm Chuck Black, and this is the Age of Ingenuity, our weekly chronicle of Canada's current innovation economy. And here's what's happening. The unraveling of the pandemic lockdowns has begun, and it's not just the protests. A federal American judge has just ruled that Pennsylvania's coronavirus orders are unconstitutional. In essence, the state has no right to lock down anything.
And I'm Alan Calder, and we're also going to take a look at weekend freedom protests in Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal, as well as other locations. There's a lot of angry people protesting this summer. The frogs are boiling over.
And we're also going to remind everyone to like, comment, share, subscribe, and support this vidcast on Patreon and PayPal. Links in the show notes below. And with that said and done, here are the stories we are currently tracking. And our first story this week is the September 14th, 2020 The Hill Post. Federal judge rules Pennsylvania's coronavirus orders are unconstitutional. And a federal judge ruled on Monday, and we're recording this on a Monday, so that's today. And the federal judge ruled that the Pennsylvania governor, Tom Wolf, his coronavirus orders, which shut down the state, closed businesses, and limited gatherings, were unconstitutional. Later on in the article, it notes that U.S. District Judge William Stickman IV, who was a Trump appointee, by the way, he said in his opinion that the COVID-19 orders from Wolf, the governor, and Pennsylvania Secretary of Health Rachel Levine violated and continued to violate the First Amendment right to freedom of assembly and the due process and equal protection clauses of the 14th Amendment. We're recording this at 8 o'clock on Monday evening. This is one of only 3 or 4 stories on the interwebs right now. I would expect more on this over the next few weeks, but to me, Al, this seems like the first legal background, first legal support for suggestions that have been going across countries and across nations for the last 6 or 7 months. The lockdowns are illegal.
You're right, but the fact that the article points out it's a Trump appointee makes this thing political now then too, right? Like
Absolutely.
This thing's got to go up and up the food chain to eventually the Supreme Court to do any value though. You know, like it's not going to do anything until it gets to that level. Or not, it's not going to be definitive rather until it gets to that level though.
You don't think it'll, how long before this goes to the Supreme Court? Another 6 months? Will it show up before the November election in the U.S.?
Wouldn't that be nice if it did?
Yeah, but you don't think it will?
We'll see which way the wind blows then, right? Because the thing is, they can make these things happen at the speed they want to. The Supreme Court, they choose to take cases on, right?
Yeah.
You know, they set their own time level though. They just have a very easy time frame to do it in the Supreme Court.
So you're saying that this is a first step, but it's nowhere near the end of the road, even for the states.
Well, for the state.
For the state, Pennsylvania.
Yes. You know, not to say I hate to be a bit of a I've been, you know, not just suggesting that it's not going to happen, but it's easily could be stopped though.
How?
Well, the thing is, no one does anything about it. Like, so that was in the. So what changed? Do you think then now? What will change overnight?
I don't know. I would venture to say the secret is finding out when U.S. District Judge William Stickman IV got appointed by the Trump administration. If he was appointed last week and this is his first judgment, this is highly political. But if he was appointed 3 years ago, I don't know. Maybe he settled into the job. Well,
he's very political though. Is the point then? Judges in the states are extremely political. They've got to be, right?
Yes.
Like how many judges were appointed by Trudeau? Do you think? Like that's gross.
I don't know if judges are appointed by Trudeau.
They're not. That's the thing.
You fooled me there for a minute.
I know I get it though. The thing is, that's what I was saying. This is gross here though. That Trump can appoint a judge. Like that's very political though. You know what I mean? Like anyway, that's just an aside on that. Like, it's just disgusting stuff, and overall, like, they're all they're all doing it wrong.
Now, I would expect more on the constitutionality of the lockdown and the legal testing of the lockdown to come out over the next weeks and the next months. But now, back to what we were expecting to do this show on. This is all the protests happening in Canada and other places around the world. I would say the one I want to focus on is the one I think is the biggest one. It's covered in the September 12th, 2020 Trade Guru post. 100,000 in Montreal, Canada, march for freedom. They chant USA, 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 fly Trump 2020 flags, and protest overbearing COVID-19 policies. I don't think liking Trump necessarily makes them bad people. I think they're talking more about freedom. Trump is more of a nationalist, and the idea is that the people in Canada like nationalism. They like nationalism for the states. They like nationalism for Canada. They especially like nationalism for the province of Quebec. But they think local people should decide local issues using local politicians. They're not necessarily into somebody from Brussels telling them what to do. But you
Slow down
go.
here, Tech. That sounds like a very broad brushstroke you're painting this story with.
Oh, I am, yes.
Do you know all those people though? Like, the truth of my take on that is that Trump, who gives a shit? They're all politicians then. But why would they, like, that's a slap on the face to Canada then. Honestly, it is. Like, they're talking like that in Alberta, the separatist movement in Alberta too then. Like,
Yeah.
I have a friend out there he wears these hats then. I'd ride him a bit about that, but he thinks they do better off as a state in Alberta than they would as a province moving forward because of the shitty government that we have. I get that sentiment.
Yeah.
That's too much though for me.
I would say that the article accuses legacy media of characterizing the rally in a certain way as a protest against wearing masks. But this specific article also has its own set of biases. It noted that flags promoting the US president and his policies were in evidence at the event. But they argue that as an anti-globalist movement, it's only natural that they note other anti-globalists from around the world. I would also say that this article was fairly positive about the protest. It said there were 100,000 people on the streets. It had pictures which showed 100,000 people on the street. It had videos from a lot of interesting people showing 100,000 people on the street. And we're going to pull up a couple of those a little later in the broadcast. But I contrast this one with CBC, which was far less positive about the protest. And I referenced the September 12, 2020 CBC News post. Anti-mask protest in Montreal draws large crowd propelled by U.S. conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
To be fair, the CBC post noted at least one non-conspiracy theory reason for the large turnout. According to the post, the march falls on the same day police were given authority to fine anyone not wearing a mask. That to me doesn't sound like a conspiracy theory.
Yeah, no. What the hell kind of conspiracy theory are they talking about?
That's something that's validated by events and validated by facts. I think they were talking about CBC in particular. Talked about QAnon. They talk about deep state conspiracy theory.
I read that too. I read the same stuff, and I just was thinking, like, what the hell are they conflating with this protest here?
Yeah.
Like, the problem is they're confusing the issue 100% to mix this stuff up so that no one knows what the hell's going on. That's the media.
I don't think they're doing it so that nobody knows what the hell's going on. I think the reporters don't get out very much. Yes. The reporters didn't go to the protest. I think they don't know what's going on. So they're conflating this stuff together to get their 500 or their 1,000 words. And they're doing what their bosses would like to hear. And the bosses don't get out very much either.
So I don't feel very wrong then, Chuck, that they don't know what the hell's going on then, to be
No,
honest.
I agree, but you were implying that they were intentionally saying this to confuse the people who go out.
You
I
were
would argue that the
inferring
people who
that.
go out don't get confused. They know
You
what's
were
going on.
inferring that, to be fair, Chuck.
Yeah,
The
I was.
like the thing is, whether or not I said that or not, I didn't say that. That was the point. But it feels as if like
Yeah,
they just don't know what the hell's going on for whatever reason. It doesn't matter. They stop reporting if you don't know what the hell's going on. For Christ's sake.
I would tend to agree. I would say that the CBC article also explicitly claimed a smaller turnout for the event. You see the picture on the screen right now showing the size of event. The CBC claimed only that several thousand people gathered Saturday in downtown Montreal.
That's ridiculous.
I think so too. I mean, you look at the photos; it's hard to believe that anybody sane who's actually looked at the evidence could believe that there were that few people out there.
So what if you would accuse or throw this by the CBC and ask them to report on this stuff for any protest? What would they say the right numbers? You think, Chuck?
Uh, I don't know. I think they would have a deadline at 5 o'clock, and they'd put together whatever they could using their own regular sources, and they probably wouldn't go to the protest.
No, exactly. That's the problem. Like that's our national media, for Christ's sake.
Yeah.
Like, they wouldn't even go to the protest. They probably have an office right down the street too. Then they probably have an office covered with protesters.
I would argue that the organizers of the event, a group called The Line, they put together a 30-minute video showing the crowds and giving some sort of an overview of what they're hoping to accomplish. We're going to put that in the show notes. I would also note that Montreal wasn't the only place in Canada where there were large crowds protesting the lockdown. I would say that I reference the September 13th, 2020 YouTube post, Vancouver Freedom Rally, September 13th, 2020, recorded by Laura Lynn Thompson-Tyler. We mentioned her last episode, and she lives in Vancouver, so she went to this protest herself. She spoke in front of the event. She had a pretty good sense of what the Freedom Rally was doing, how big the size was, and I would encourage people to look at her video as well. I think it's a fairly capable, fairly competent effort. I would also suggest that there were other freedom protests in Toronto. You and I went to that one, Al. There were also in Oshawa, in Cobourg, in Peterborough, Winnipeg, Manitoba. My hometown had a protest this weekend. Edmonton, Alberta, and these are all according to the Line websites at theline.com. And just there were a lot of people out in the streets objecting to the lockdown, objecting to the restrictions on our freedoms, and just getting some sun. What do you think about that, Al?
Oh, I think that's very accurate then. But also, it's most noteworthy in Toronto, at least at the Cherry Beach, which was packed though.
Yeah, that wasn't the Saturday Toronto protest at Queen's Park. That was the evening protest. That was a mile down the street from Cherry Beach tonight. They just sort of changed their location, but that had the best crowd I've seen in months out there. A really sociable group of people. The dancing was louder. The police were more sociable. They were there specifically to protect us rather than to intimidate us. I thought it was a really, really wonderful environment that night.
100%, Chuck. I agree. I guess the reason I keep bringing these things up then is to remind you of my theory about this being like a 60s sort of party, but more so than as love, peace, and harmony.
Yeah.
Come on, Chuck. You didn't see that there? That's all it's saying.
I saw peace and harmony. I saw a lot of really nice people. I have silver hair. Some would call it gray. And about 10 guys came up about halfway through the evening and accused me of stealing all the 20-year-old women. I was there covering it for this show right now, but I was accused of stealing all the 20-year-old women, and they all high-fived me and they shook my hands and they were impressed that I could stay up past midnight.
That's funny though. Hey Chuck, and another thing worth mentioning too then, thanks for reminding me though, a bit, I feel as if that the gay bars kind of let these guys onto Cherry Beach nearly right directly somehow. Because a lot of these guys are kissing more so than usual, I guess, than I'm used to there.
How about I never noticed that? I would say there's a lot of alternative
Yeah,
sexualities
listen,
there.
I've no problem.
Just a lot of people going out to have
Oh,
fun,
I
being
agree, man.
loose
It was
and
just a
being able to.
great
Yeah,
party though. And there was more
I
than popping up then outside of the normal channels, I guess.
uh, yeah, that's one of my theories. If the lockdowns carry on with increasing severity over a period of time, an alternative economy will essentially grow up. People will start using barter. People will start trading time and effort for resources, things they need. People will do things under the table. People will stop going to legitimate official bars and dances, and they will start going to places where they're allowed to be open and relaxed.
Well, also, Chuck, also what like the line movement as well, though, too, right? Like
Yes.
they're heavily involved in this stuff, and they're representing themselves at these parties, though, too, right?
Yeah, I would say that's true. Yeah.
Like this is a protest party. They speak about this sort of stuff at Queens Park,
Yeah.
and at Ottawa when it went as well.
Yeah, the line people, to be fair,
Mhm.
I did some research. There were line people in Montreal. The recording was from Lamont Daigle
Mhm.
that we've referenced in the show notes from Montreal. There were also the line people in Vancouver, in at least one of the other locations across Canada. One of the line people was in Mexico over the weekend as well. I looked at their Facebook page. And as I understand, Chris Sky was in the
Netherlands.
Netherlands. Yeah, and
Yeah.
he reminded everybody who listens to his Facebook post that the Netherlands is one of those countries that never got carried away with the lockdown. Everybody walks about normally. The businesses were never closed down. Who knows? If the world keeps going crazy, I may relocate to the Netherlands.
Well, we miss you, Chuck.
I think it's worth noting at this point that it's not just the line protesting. It's not just anti-mask people protesting. It's not just anti-lockdown people protesting. Protesting has become a grand hobby in Canada and around the world over the last 6 months. Maybe there's just nothing good on television, or maybe the restaurants haven't been open for most of that period. But a lot of people are protesting, and not just here or in the U.S. Uh, I reference Native groups as per the September 12th, 2020 CTV News post. Hundreds staged Toronto protest in solidarity with Six Nation land defenders. I would suggest there were protests last week in Toronto over international students. And for that, I reference the September 9th, 2020 Can Indian News Post. International students organized protest demonstrations in Toronto and Mississauga. I would suggest that there were also anti-police protesters on the streets of Toronto over the weekend. And for that, I reference the September 10th, 2020 Toronto.com post. Toronto protest calls for an end to police violence in Caledonia land occupation. And I also noticed that there are pro-police protesters. And for that, I referenced the September 12th, 2020 CTV News post. We need effective policies. Cambridge residents rally for action on crime and drug addiction. So I'm wondering, all these protests out in the streets, all these people not necessarily socially distancing, all the extra police required to keep everybody in line and protect them. What do you think, Al? Do protests work?
Not protesting will not work. How's that?
Yeah, that's
Like
fair.
if people do nothing, nothing will happen. Like I would say protesting is at least the good spot to start then if you want to get your point across.
Yeah, that what you're saying right now reminds me a little bit about the November 4th, 2019, The Economist post. Why are so many countries witnessing mass protests? The protests started well over a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago. They've been increasing during this time of lockdown.
Mhm.
Uh, to me, it means that the governments have stopped listening to the people. They seem intent on listening to subject matter experts who know a lot about medicine or economics, or very little about a lot about a great little. That's what experts do. They know everything about nothing.
Yeah, a little sliver of something then, I guess, more so than the actual substance of it.
Yeah, the politicians are grasping at straws. They're the ones that are supposed to be generalists. They're supposed to be the ones able to put the pieces together, and they're overwhelmed. They don't know what to do.
And there I jump.
If we want our freedoms, we got to fight for them. And if we want to improve our life, if we want to continue this great 300-year stretch of innovation and ingenuity that I had actually hoped to talk about when we started doing this show, we got to stand up for our freedom. Freedom, the ability to think independently, is what's demanded if you ever hope to progress.
And those are the stories we're covering this week. As always, the articles we've referenced are listed in the show notes.
Keep in touch with us on Facebook, Gab, LinkedIn, Minds, Pinterest, Steemit, and Twitter. Check out other stories we're tracking on our innovation news and upcoming events Scoop It feeds. And remember, like, subscribe, share, comment on our posts. Your actions will feed the algorithms and bots which help to distribute our stories. And if you'd like to promote your event or your activity, or if you think you have insight into Canada's current innovation economy, then send me an email. I'm at chuck.black@protonmail.com.
And we're currently on YouTube and BitChute and hope to be on other platforms soon. If you like the content we create, send some money to our Patreon and PayPal accounts. We really appreciate your patronage.
And that's all for this week. We'll be back next week with more stories covering our current Age of Ingenuity.